Today we have a story about Grace Holloway, a housekeeper who entered the Grand Brennan Estate in 1897 and discovered that some horrors wear the mask of respectability. This is her account, recovered from a water-damaged journal found beneath the floorboards of what was once the finest house in Millbrook County. If you enjoyed this story, consider subscribing and becoming part of our community. Where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments. We love hearing from our amazing viewers all around the world. From the private journal of Grace Holloway, April 1890 Savini. Write this while my hands still remember steadiness. My name is Grace Holloway. I am 24 years old, and I have kept house since I was 14. I know how to make a room shine, how to move through a day without disturbing the air, how to be present and invisible at once. The Brennan Estate sits on the hill, above Millbrook, like a crown on a head that does not deserve it. Everyone knows the family. Colonel Marcus Brennan made his fortune in tobacco before the war, lost half of it during Fictional, the rest back afterward, through means nobody discusses in polite company. His wife, Mrs. Elizabeth Brennan, is known throughout 3 counties for her charity work and her impeccable taste. Their house is white stone and black shutters, surrounded by ancient oaks that seem to bend away from the structure rather than toward it. I heard about the position from Mrs. Patterson at the general store. She measured out my flour with unusual care, not meeting my eyes. "They pay well," she said quietly. $3 a week plus room and board. "But Grace, they are particular about their ways." The way she said it made my skin prickle, but I needed the work. My mother had taken sick over the winter, and the doctor's bills had eaten through our small savings. $3 a week was more than I had ever earned. I presented myself at the servants' entrance on a grey April morning. The housekeeper who answered was a thin white woman named Mrs. Violet Carr, with a face like a hatchet and eyes that took inventory of my worth in 3 seconds. "You are Grace Holloway," she said. It was not a question. "Yes, ma'am. You come with references from the Whitmore house and the Reverend's residence. Both speak of your discretion." Again, not a question. She made discretion sound like a threat. She led me through the servants' hall, her shoes clicking on the stone floor in a rhythm that felt deliberately unsettling. The house was beautiful in the way that expensive things often are, but there was something cold about it. The portraits on the walls seemed to watch with disapproval. The flowers in the vases were perfect, but gave off no scent. "You will attend to the 2nd floor," Mrs. Carr said. "The family bedrooms, the library, the private sitting room. You will begin at 5 each morning. You will be finished by 7 in the evening. You will not speak unless spoken to. You will not enter the west wing under any circumstances. You will not ask questions about the family's private affairs." She stopped before a closed door, resting her hand on the knob without opening it. "There are 3 children in this house," she said, and her voice dropped to something almost gentle, almost sad. "You will sometimes hear them. You will not acknowledge them. You will not speak to them. You will not look directly at them if you happen to encounter them. Do you understand?" "I am not sure I do, ma'am." Her eyes went hard again. "You will understand soon enough. Do you accept the position or not?" I thought of my mother's labored breathing, the empty jar where we kept the household money, the winter ahead. "I accept." "Good. Your room is in the attic. You begin tomorrow." That night, I lay in my narrow bed under the eaves and listened to the house settle around me. Old houses make noise, I told myself. Wood expands and contracts. Pipes knock and hiss. But somewhere below me, I heard something else. Footsteps, light and quick. A child's laughter, high and sweet, cut off abruptly. Then silence, so complete it felt like a hand pressed over my mouth. I did not sleep well. When I rose at 4:30 the next morning, I found something on my door. Someone had tied a small bundle of dried rosemary with black thread and hung it from the handle. Underneath it, scratched faintly into the wood, were 3 words I could barely read in the dim light. "Count them carefully." I took the rosemary down with shaking hands and went to begin my work. The house has rules that live in the silence between words. I learned them not through instruction but through the careful watching that keeps women like me alive in places like this. I learned that Mrs. Brennan takes her breakfast in her room at exactly 8 o'clock, that the Colonel leaves for his office at 9 and returns at 6, that the children are never present at meals. I learned that the servants do not gossip, do not linger, do not make eye contact with one another unless necessary. I learned that the west wing is always locked, and that Mrs. Carr keeps the only key on a chain around her neck. I learned to count. There were 3 children. I knew this because Mrs. Carr had told me so, and because I sometimes glimpsed them from the corner of my eye. A boy of perhaps 10, tall for his age, with dark curls, twin girls, younger, maybe 7, with matching blue dresses. They appeared in doorways and at the ends of hallways, always silent, always watching me with eyes that seemed too old for their faces. The rule was clear: do not acknowledge them, do not speak, do not look directly. I obeyed, though it felt wrong in my bones. Children should be greeted, smiled at, made to feel seen. But these children did not behave like children. They did not run or shout or laugh, except for that one time I heard it in the night. They moved like shadows, appearing and disappearing according to rules I did not understand. On my 10th day, I was cleaning the library when I heard the whisper, "She does not see us." I kept my eyes on the bookshelf I was dusting, my heart hammering. She is like the others, afraid. Mother says we must be patient. I gripped my dustcloth and continued my work, counting seconds in my head until the voices faded. When I finally allowed myself to glance toward where they had been, I saw only 3 sets of small, wet footprints leading across the carpet toward the door. Wet, though it had not rained in days. That evening, Mrs. Carr found me in the hallway. "You saw them today?" Again, not a question. "I saw nothing, ma'am." I attended to my duties. Something flickered across her face. Approval, relief. "Good. The Colonel and Mrs. Brennan are pleased with your work. You will receive your wages Saturday." She turned to leave, then paused. "Grace, do you know why you are the 7th housekeeper this year?" My mouth went dry. "No, Mum." Because the others could not follow simple instructions. They asked questions. They looked where they should not look. They showed pity. She said the word like a curse. "We do not need pity here. We need discretion. Can you continue to be discreet?" "Yes, ma'am. I hope so. The children have taken a liking to you. That can be a good thing, if you are careful." She walked away, her footsteps echoing in the empty hall. That night, I found another bundle of rosemary on my door. This time there was a note, written in careful script on expensive paper. "They are not what they seem. The Colonel's scenes have faces. Count them, remember. Bear witness." I burned the note in my candle flame and watched the paper curl and blacken. The next morning, I saw the portrait it hung in the Colonel's study, a room I cleaned on Tuesdays and Fridays. I had dusted around it a dozen times without really seeing it, but that morning the light fell differently, and I found myself looking directly at the painted faces. Colonel Brennan stood in the center, stern and proud in his military uniform. Beside him sat Mrs. Brennan, beautiful and cold in emerald silk, and arranged around them, like decorative objects, were 3 children, a boy with dark curls, twin girls in blue dresses, but their faces were wrong. The artist had painted them with features that did not quite match the Colonel's sharp angles or Mrs. Brennan's pale delicacy. Their skin was a shade warmer, their hair a texture different, and their eyes, even in paint, held a terrible knowledge. I was still staring when I heard the door close softly behind me. I turned to find Mrs. Brennan herself standing in the doorway, watching me with an expression I could not read. She was even more beautiful in person than in her portrait, with golden hair and skin like porcelain. She was also, I realized with a cold shock, younger than me, perhaps 22 at most. "They are lovely, are they not?" she said, her voice like honey poured over ice. "Yes, ma'am. The Colonel was quite prolific before our marriage. Did you know that, Grace?" I said nothing. Every instinct screamed at me to look away, to curtsy, to flee. He had a woman who worked in his house. Before the war, a beautiful woman, they say. He was weak, as men so often are. She walked closer, her silk skirts rustling. She gave him 3 children. Can you imagine? 3 living reminders of his weakness, his sin. She stopped directly in front of me. When they first married the Colonel, I made certain promises. To honor him, to care for his household, to ensure his legacy remained untarnished. Her smile was terrible. "I keep my promises, Grace. Do you keep yours?" "I try to, ma'am." "Good, then we understand each other. You will see nothing. You will say nothing. You will continue your work, collect your wages, and remember that discretion is the highest virtue." She reached out and touched my cheek with fingers cold as marble. "Some things that exist must not be acknowledged. Do you understand?" "Yes, ma'am." She left as silently as she had come. I stood alone in the study, staring at the portrait, and finally understood why the children's footprints had been wet. They were not walking through the house. They were drowning in it. The dreams began. In the third week, I would wake in darkness with the taste of water in my mouth, my nightgown drenched in sweat, gasping for air I could not catch. In the dreams, I was small again, pulled down into cold depths by hands that gripped my ankles. Above me, I could see the circle of light growing smaller, could see a woman's face looking down, beautiful and still, watching me drown with the patience of someone waiting for bread to rise. I told myself they were only dreams. The mind plays tricks when we are tired, when we carry secrets that want to be spoken. But the children grew bolder. I would find them waiting in rooms I had just cleaned, their clothes dripping water onto the polished floors. They no longer whispered. They stared at me with terrible intensity, their lips moving silently, forming words I could not hear, but somehow understood. Tell. I kept my eyes down. I followed the rules, but there was one person in that house who did not follow rules with the same fearful precision as the rest of us. Her name was Martha Hayes, and she worked in the kitchen. She was perhaps 50, with grey-streaked hair and hands scarred from years of work. She had been with the Brennan household for only 3 months longer than I had, and she watched me with eyes that held understanding. It was Martha who found me in the pantry one afternoon, shaking so hard I had dropped a jar of preserves. The children had cornered me in the upstairs hallway, close enough that I could smell the pond water on their skin, could see the weeds tangled in their hair. "Come with me," Martha said quietly, and led me down to the kitchen garden where we could not be overheard. She handed me a cup of water. I drank, my hands still trembling. "You see them clear now, don't you?" she said. "I see nothing. I follow the rules, child. The rules are meant to protect her, not us." Martha looked back at the house, her expression hard. "Do you know what happened to the woman who was here before you, before me?" I shook my head. She asked questions. She went to the minister in town, said there were children in the house who seemed neglected, who seemed wrong somehow. She thought she was doing right. Martha's voice dropped. "They found her in her room 2 days later. Heart gave out, the doctor said. She was 28 years old. The water turned sour in my stomach. And the one before her," Martha continued, "she tried to leave in the night, packed her things and ran. They found her body at the bottom of the stairs. Terrible accident, they said. Tragic. Why are you telling me this? Because you have a kind face, and kind women do not last long in houses built on buried sins." She gripped my hand. "Those children existed, Grace. They were real. The Colonel's children by a woman named Ruth, who kept this house before Mrs. Brennan came. Beautiful Ruth, who worked here for 15 years, who loved a man too weak to protect her or the babies she bore him. What happened to her?" Martha's eyes filled with tears. "Mrs. Brennan happened. The new bride who could not bear the shame of her husband's living mistakes, who could not endure the whispers, the pointed fingers, the reminder that she was second choice, second best. Where are they?" I whispered. "Where are the children? Where all inconvenient truths go in houses like this, down deep, where no one will find them." She pointed toward the west wing. "There is a well in the courtyard, old and dry, covered over now. 40 years ago it went down 200 feet. These days it goes down further still." I thought I might be sick. Why does no one speak of this? Why does the town not? The Colonel owns half the town, child, and the half he does not own, he controls through fear or favor. Mrs. Brennan is beloved for her charity, her grace, her perfect manners. Who would believe that such a woman could do such things? Martha's voice turned bitter. And who would care, even if they believed? Ruth was a black woman, property once upon a time, convenient in certain ways and inconvenient in others. Her children were proof of sin, and sin must be cleansed. So we do nothing. We simply work and pretend, and let them haunt us. Yes, because the alternative is joining them. Martha squeezed my hand once more. "I am telling you this so you know, so you can choose. Stay and endure, or leave before you learn too much, see too much. Why do you stay?" Her smile was sad. "Because someone must remember, someone must bear witness, and because I am old and tired and have nowhere else to go." She stood, brushing dirt from her apron. "But you are young yet. You have choices." That night, I lay awake listening to the house. Around midnight, I heard it clearly. Footsteps on the stairs. Children's voices singing a lullaby I half remembered from my own childhood. The sound of water dripping, steady and slow. And beneath it all, a woman's voice, soft and loving. "Hush now. Mama's here. Mama remembers." I rose and went to my window. The moon was full, casting silver light across the grounds. In the courtyard below, I could see the covered well, its stone edge barely visible beneath the flowering vines that had been trained to grow over it. As I watched, 3 small figures emerged from the shadows and gathered at the well's edge. They looked up at my window, their faces pale in the moonlight, and raised their hands in unison, not waving, beckoning. Behind them, I saw another figure, a woman in a simple dress, her hair covered by a kerchief, her face beautiful even in death. She placed her hands on the children's shoulders and turned her gaze to the east wing window where I knew Mrs. Brennan slept in her fine bed with her purchased silence. The dead woman smiled, and I understood then that some hauntings are not random, not meaningless. Some are justice delayed, patience perfected, vengeance waiting for exactly the right moment to strike. I just did not know yet that I would be the instrument. Mrs. Brennan sent for me on a Tuesday morning. Mrs. Carr delivered the message with her usual efficiency, but I saw something in her eyes I had not seen before. Was it warning or pity? I climbed the stairs to Mrs. Brennan's private sitting room with my heart beating against my ribs like a trapped bird. The door was open. She sat by the window in a pool of morning light, working on embroidery with perfect, tiny stitches. "Come in, Grace." "Close the door." I obeyed. "You have been with us for 3 months now," she said, without looking up from her work. "Mrs. Carr tells me you are the most competent housekeeper we have had in some time. Quiet, efficient, discreet. Thank you, ma'am. I have a special task for you." She set down her embroidery and looked at me directly. Her eyes were the color of ice on a winter pond. "The West Wing requires cleaning. It has been neglected for too long. You will clean it thoroughly, top to bottom, beginning today." My mouth went dry. Mrs. Carr said the West Wing was forbidden. It was. Now it is not. Her smile was pleasant and terrible. "You will find the key on your pillow when you return to your room. You will work alone. You will begin this afternoon and continue until the work is complete. Do you understand?" "Yes, ma'am." "Good. One more thing, Grace." She picked up her embroidery again, her needle moving with mechanical precision. "You will find certain items in the West Wing, personal effects, children's things. You will pack them carefully into the trunk you will find in the hallway. You will not examine them. You will not speak of them. When you are finished, the Colonel will have the trunk removed and burned." "Burned, ma'am." "We are closing a chapter, you see. Moving forward, the past must be tidied away." She looked at me again, and I saw something flicker behind her perfect composure. Desperation, fear. "You are a sensible woman, Grace. You understand that some things must be forgotten in order for life to continue pleasantly, don't you?" "I understand you want me to destroy evidence," I said, and immediately regretted my words. The silence stretched between us like a rope drawn tight. Then Mrs. Brennan laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Evidence? Of what, dear girl?" "Of the Colonel's indiscretions. Everyone knows but my solution to an indelicate problem. No one cares." She leaned forward. "You think you have discovered some terrible secret, but let me tell you the truth. There is no secret. There is only a story no one wishes to hear. The Colonel was weak. Ruth was convenient. They made children who could not be kept. I handled it. The town accepts this. The law accepts this. God himself accepts this, or I would not wake each morning in my comfortable bed. And the children," I whispered, "do they accept it?" Her face went still. "There are no children. There never were. The Colonel had 3 bastards who died of influenza in the winter of 1893, before I married him. That is the official record. That is the truth that matters. And the unofficial truth does not exist if no one speaks it." She stood, smoothing her skirts. "Clean the West Wing, Grace. Pack the trunk. Take your wages, or refuse, and find out what happens to women who cannot follow simple instructions in this house." I left her sitting room and returned to my attic room. The key was there, as promised, lying on my pillow like a dead thing. It was old iron, heavy in my palm, and it felt wrong to touch it. I could leave, pack my few belongings, walk out the servants' entrance, never return. But I thought of my mother, of the doctor's bills, of how far $3 a week went toward keeping her in medicine and comfort. I thought of Ruth, whose name no one spoke. I thought of 3 children, who had been inconvenient. I picked up the key and went to the West Wing. The hallway was different there, colder. The wallpaper was faded, water-stained in places, peeling at the seams. My footsteps echoed too loudly. At the end of the hall was a door, and the key fit perfectly into its lock. Inside was a nursery, or it had been, once. Now it was a mausoleum, perfectly preserved. 3 small beds, neatly made, toys arranged on shelves, a rocking horse with a silk mane, books stacked by the window, and on the wall, painted in careful letters, Samuel, Grace, and Ruth. I stood in the doorway and wept. They had named one of the girls after their mother. They had existed, had been loved, had lived in this room and played with these toys and slept in these beds. And then they had been erased, buried, drowned in silence and water and lies. On the dresser was a photograph in a silver frame. Ruth stood tall and beautiful, her arms around 3 children who smiled at the camera with open, trusting faces. Behind them, barely visible, stood the Colonel, his hand resting on Ruth's shoulder with obvious affection. I touched the glass and felt the room grow colder. The children appeared one by one, Samuel by his bed, his clothes dripping, the twins by the window, water running from their hair onto the floor. They did not move. They simply stood and watched me with eyes that held all the patience of the dead. "I see you," I whispered. "I know what happened to you." Samuel opened his mouth, and water poured out, black and foul. The twins raised their hands, and I saw the marks on their wrists where they had struggled, had fought, had tried to climb from the well while their stepmother watched with her beautiful, patient face. "I cannot bring you back," I said, my voice breaking. "I cannot give you justice. I have no power here." But even as I said it, I knew it was a lie. I had the power every servant has, the power to see, to remember, to speak, the power to refuse to forget. I took the photograph from the dresser and slipped it into my pocket. Then I began to pack the trunk, but not to burn, to preserve, to keep. That night, Mrs. Brennan's screaming woke the house. I heard it from my attic room, heard the Colonel's heavy footsteps running, heard Mrs. Carr's sharp commands to the other servants. In the morning, we learned that Mrs. Brennan had suffered a terrible fright. She had woken to find her room flooded with water, her fine carpets ruined, her silk curtains dripping. But when the Colonel and Mrs. Carr had arrived, the room was dry, everything in perfect order. "She is overwrought," the Colonel announced at breakfast. "The heat has affected her nerves. She will rest." I saw his hands shake as he held his coffee cup, and I knew the children had begun their own work. I did not burn the trunk. Instead, I hid it in the carriage house, beneath old saddle blankets and broken furniture. I told Mrs. Carr the task was complete, the items burned as instructed. She looked at me with those sharp eyes and said, "You are certain?" "Yes, ma'am." "Good, Mrs. Brennan is pleased." But Mrs. Brennan was not pleased. She was unraveling. I saw it in the way her hair, always perfectly arranged, began to show wisps and tangles, in the way her hands trembled when she held her teacup, in the way she started at shadows and sounds that no one else could. Here, the children had focused their attention on her with the single-minded purpose of the dead who know exactly who wronged them. She would find wet footprints leading to her bed, would wake with the taste of pond water in her mouth, would hear children's voices singing lullabies outside her door at 3 in the morning. The Colonel hired doctors who prescribed nerve tonics and rest. The minister came to pray. Nothing helped. I watched and I waited, and I kept the photograph hidden in my Bible. It was Martha who gave me the idea. "The county keeps records," she said one evening as we shelled peas in the kitchen garden. "Birth records, death records, legal documents. If you wanted to prove something, you would need paper proof, the kind that cannot be denied or burned. Where would such records be kept? The courthouse. But you would need a reason to request them, and you would need someone to care enough to look." She glanced at me. "Do you know anyone who might care?" I thought of Reverend Thomas, who had written one of my references. A kind man, older, known for his interest in justice and his discomfort with the Colonel's influence in town. A man who might listen if the right evidence were presented. "Perhaps," I said. That Saturday, on my half-day off, I walked into town to the courthouse. It was a small building, red brick and white columns, with an office where a tired clerk managed the county's paperwork. "I need to see birth records," I told him, "from 1887 to 1890. He looked at me over his spectacles. "What business is that of yours?" "Family research," I lied smoothly. "My cousin believes we may have relatives in this area." He sighed and pulled out heavy ledgers, sliding them across the counter. "You have 1 hour." I found them in the 1888 records. 3 births registered to Ruth, Mary Whitfield, residence listed as the Brennan Estate, father listed as Marcus Brennan, The clerk had noted them with perfect, damning clarity. Samuel Marcus Brennan, born March 2nd. Grace Ruth Brennan, born June 15th. Ruth Elizabeth Brennan, born June 15th. Legitimate children in all but law, acknowledged in the public record. I copied the information carefully into my notebook, my hands shaking. Then I searched for death records. There were none. No record of influenza, no record of death certificates, no record of burial permits. 3 children who existed in the birth ledger had simply vanished from official documentation, because no one had reported their deaths, because no one had claimed their bodies, because they had been made to disappear so thoroughly that even the law had forgotten them. I closed the ledgers and thanked the clerk. Then I walked to Reverend Thomas's house and knocked on his door. He was a thin man with gentle eyes and silver hair, and he welcomed me into his study with a puzzled smile. "Miss Holloway, what brings you here?" I handed him the photograph and my notebook. "I need to show you something, Reverend, and then I need you to help me decide if the truth is worth dying for." He looked at the photograph for a long time. Then he read my notes. When he looked up at me, his face had gone pale. "Where did you get this?" "The Brennan house, the West Wing. Mrs. Brennan ordered me to pack away the children's belongings and burn them. I kept the photograph instead. These children, I was told they died of illness. They died of something, Reverend, but there are no death certificates, no burial records, just birth certificates and then silence." He stood and walked to his window, looking out at the town square, where the Colonel's bank stood tall and prosperous. "Do you understand what you are asking me to do, child? The Colonel is the most powerful man in this county. Mrs. Brennan is beloved. If I pursue this, if I make accusations without absolute proof, they haunt her. Reverend, the children, I have seen them. Whatever she did to them, wherever their bodies lie, they remember, and they are patient." He turned to look at me. "You are asking me to believe in ghosts. I am asking you to believe in murder. The ghosts are simply the evidence that will not stay buried." We sat in silence for a long moment. Then he said, "I will need time. I will need to consult with the county sheriff, with the state authorities. I will need more than a photograph and missing death records. Can you get me more? What do you need? A witness. Someone who knows what happened. Someone willing to testify." I thought of Martha, who had stayed to bear witness. I thought of Mrs. Carr, who knew everything but said nothing. I thought of the gardener, the stable hand, the cook who had been there before Mrs. Brennan came. "I will try," I said, as I stood to leave. He touched my arm. "Miss Holloway, this is dangerous. If the Colonel discovers what you are doing, I know. But those children deserve more than silence. Ruth deserves more than being forgotten." I met his eyes, and I will not be another woman who knew and said nothing. He nodded slowly. "Then may God protect you. Come back in 1 week. I will have a plan." I walked back to the Brennan house as the sun set, turning the white stone pink and gold. It looked beautiful in that light, like a painting, like something pure. I wondered if evil always wore such lovely masks. That night, the children came to my room for the first time. I woke to find them standing at the foot of my bed, dripping and silent, but their faces had changed. They looked less dead, less terrible. They looked almost hopeful. Samuel reached out a translucent hand and touched the Bible where I had hidden their mother's photograph. Then they smiled, turned, and walked through my closed door. I understood. They knew what I was trying to do, and they were waiting to see if I would succeed. I found my witness in an unexpected place. Her name was Catherine Mills, and she had worked as Mrs. Brennan's personal maid for the first 2 years of her marriage. I learned of her from Martha, who remembered that Catherine had left the household abruptly in 1894. Shortly after the children disappeared, she moved to Riverside, 3 towns over, Martha said, works at a boarding house there. I heard she never married, never spoke of her time here, but she knows. Grace she saw. I used my next half day to take the train to Riverside. The boarding house was respectable but modest, and Catherine was sweeping the front steps when I arrived. She was perhaps 35, with tired eyes and graying brown hair. "Catherine Mills?" I asked. She looked up, and when she saw my face, when she recognized what I was, her expression crumbled into something like grief. "You work at the Brennan house," she said. It was not a question. "Yes, ma'am." "Then you have seen them?" "The children, yes." She set down her broom with shaking hands. "Come inside. We should not speak of this on the street." Her room was small and clean. We sat at a tiny table by the window, and I told her everything. The hauntings, the photograph, the missing death records. Reverend Thomas's investigation. When I finished, she was crying silently, tears running down her face. I knew someone would come eventually, she said. I prayed for it. I prayed that God would send someone brave enough to speak what I could not. Tell me what happened, I said gently. Please. She took a shuddering breath. I was there the night she did it. August 17th, 1893. The children had been difficult, not badly behaved, just present, visible. Mrs. Brennan could not bear it. She could not bear the way the Colonel looked at them with fondness, could not bear the whispers at church, the way people talked about Ruth, about the beautiful woman who had been replaced. Where was Ruth? Dead already, died in childbirth with a fourth baby the year before. The Colonel kept the children, said they were his blood, said he would care for them. Mrs. Brennan smiled and agreed, and planned. Catherine's hands twisted in her lap. That night, she called me to help her, said the children were ill, needed to be taken to the old well house for quarantine. I believed her. I was young and stupid, and I believed her. What did she do? She took them one by one, told them it was a game. The well was dry, she said. They could climb down the ladder and explore. Samuel went first because he was brave. Then the girls, because they followed their brother everywhere. Catherine's voice broke. She had me pull up the ladder after they climbed down, and then she locked a grate. I felt the room tilt. They called for us, Catherine whispered. For 3 days, they called. I could hear them from my room. Mrs. Brennan told the Colonel they had run away, that they had been uncontrollable, that she had sent search parties. He believed her. He always believed her. No one else heard them. The old well is in the far courtyard, behind walls, and Mrs. Brennan had the water redirected. The spring that fed the well, the one that had run dry years before, she had it opened again. Catherine looked at me with hollow eyes. She drowned them, Grace slowly over 3 days, and she made me bring her tea while she listened to them scream. I thought I might be sick. Why did you not tell someone? The sheriff, the minister, anyone? I tried. I went to the sheriff the next week, told him everything. He laughed at me, said I was a hysterical woman, that the Colonel's children had run away and good riddance, that I should be careful spreading lies about my betters. Her voice turned bitter. Mrs. Brennan gave the church a new bell tower that year. The sheriff got a new house. Everyone was paid for their silence except me. Why did you leave? Because I could not sleep, could not eat, could not look at her beautiful face without seeing what lay beneath, and because the children came to me every night, dripping and cold, asking why I did not help them. She gripped my hands. Does she see them now? Does she suffer? Yes, every day. They haunt her without mercy. Catherine smiled, and it was terrible. Good, let her suffer every day of her life. Let her wake drowning. Let her never know peace. The Reverend needs a witness, I said. Someone who will testify to what happened. Will you do it? The smile faded. If I testify, they will call me mad. They will destroy my reputation, my livelihood. The Colonel will ensure I never work again. If you do not testify, they will go on being forgotten. Ruth's children will have no justice, no acknowledgement. They will be erased from history entirely. She sat in silence for a long time, staring at her hands. Then she said, I will do it. God help me, I will do it. Those babies deserve more than my fear. I returned to the Brennan house as the sun was setting. Mrs. Carr was waiting for me in the hallway. Mrs. Brennan wishes to see you, she said, and her voice was strange, careful. I climbed the stairs to the sitting room. Mrs. Brennan stood by the window, her back to me. She was still beautiful, but she looked thinner now, fragile. Where did you go today, Grace? She asked without turning. To town, ma'am. To visit a friend. You are lying. Mrs. Carr saw you take the train to Riverside. Why would you go to Riverside? My heart hammered, but I kept my voice steady. I was visiting a former employee, ma'am, seeking advice about a personal matter. She turned then, and I saw that her eyes were red-rimmed, her face drawn. Which former employee? I do not recall her name. You are lying again. She walked toward me slowly. I know you have been asking questions. I know you took the photograph from the West Wing. I know you have been to the courthouse. I said nothing. Do you think you can destroy me, Grace? Do you think anyone will believe a colored housekeeper over me? Her voice rose. I am Elizabeth Brennan. I am beloved in this town. I am respected. You are nothing. Nothing. I am a witness, I said quietly, and I am not alone. She slapped me hard across the face. I felt the sting, tasted blood. You will leave this house tonight, she hissed. You will take nothing. You will speak to no one, and you will be grateful that I do not have you arrested for theft." "Then arrest me," I said. "Call the sheriff. Let us discuss the photograph in front of him. Let us discuss why 3 children have birth certificates but no death records. Let us discuss the old well and what lies at the bottom." She went pale. "You have no proof. No one will listen to you. Perhaps the children will speak for themselves." As if summoned, the temperature in the room dropped, the windows frosted over, and from somewhere deep in the house came the sound of children singing. Mrs. Brennan began to scream. The hearing was held in the small courthouse on a grey September morning. Reverend Thomas had worked quietly with the county prosecutor, a young man named Daniel Wright, who had his own grievances with the colonel's influence. Together, they had built a case from fragments, the birth records, the missing death certificates, Catherine's testimony, my account of the West Wing, and the photograph. The colonel arrived with his lawyer, confident and dismissive. Mrs. Brennan came in a black silk dress, her face composed, playing the role of wronged innocence. Half the town filled the gallery, drawn by gossip and scandal. I sat in the front row beside Catherine, who trembled but held herself upright. Martha sat behind us, and in the back, though no one else could see them, 3 children stood silent and watchful. Prosecutor Wright stood to present the case. He was thorough and careful, laying out each piece of evidence like stones in a path. The birth records that proved the children existed, the testimonies from town residents who remembered Ruth and her children, Catherine's account of that terrible August night. The colonel's lawyer tried to dismiss it all. Hearsay, he claimed, the ramblings of jealous servants with grudges. Mrs. Brennan wept delicately into a handkerchief, playing the victim of cruel rumors. Then Wright called me to testify. I walked to the stand with my head high, placed my hand on the Bible, and swore to tell the truth. "Miss Holloway," Wright said, "please tell the court what you found in the West Wing of the Brennan estate." I described everything: the preserved nursery, the toys and beds, the names painted on the wall, the photograph I had kept. "Objection!" The colonel's lawyer shouted. "The witness has admitted to theft of private property." "If the photograph belongs to the Brennan household," Wright said smoothly, "then surely Mrs. Brennan will not object to it being entered into evidence, unless she has reason to want it hidden." The photograph was passed to the judge. He studied it for a long moment, his expression unreadable. "Mrs. Brennan," the judge said, "these are your stepchildren in this photograph." She dabbed at her eyes. "They were the colonel's wards, Your Honor, children from a previous arrangement. They ran away in 1893. We searched for weeks, and yet no missing persons report was filed." Wright said. "No death certificates were issued. They simply vanished from all records. We assumed they had gone north." The colonel said, speaking for the first time. His voice was hard. "It was not unusual for such children to run away seeking opportunity." "Such children," Wright repeated. "You mean your own children, Colonel Brennan? Illegitimate children, from a woman who no longer worked in my household, because Ruth Whitfield had died," Wright said, "leaving 3 orphaned children in your care. Children you acknowledged on their birth certificates. Children who then disappeared without any legal documentation whatsoever." The room had gone very quiet. "I am calling Catherine Mills to the stand," Wright announced. Catherine rose on shaking legs and took her oath. Then, in a voice that grew stronger with each word, she told them everything. The ladder pulled away. 3 days of crying that no one answered. Mrs. Brennan's lawyer attacked her credibility viciously. Why had she not reported this immediately? Why should anyone believe a dismissed servant? Was she not simply seeking revenge for being terminated? But Catherine held firm. "I am seeking nothing but the truth," she said. "Those children deserve to be remembered. Their mother deserves justice. Their mother was a Negro servant." The lawyer sneered. "Hardly their mother was a human being." I shouted from the gallery, unable to contain myself. "And those children were innocent. Whatever you think of Ruth, whatever laws said she was, those babies did nothing but exist." The judge banged his gavel. "Order!" But the damage was done. The mask had slipped. The lawyer's contempt, the colonel's cold dismissal, Mrs. Brennan's calculating silence, the whole room could see it now. "Your Honor," Wright said, "I am requesting a warrant to search the Brennan estate, specifically, to excavate the old well in the eastern courtyard." Mrs. Brennan stood abruptly. "This is absurd. You cannot." "I can and I will," the judge said. "Colonel Brennan, Mrs. Brennan, you are ordered to provide access to your property for a full investigation. This hearing is adjourned until such time as the search is complete." The colonel's face went purple with rage, but there was nothing he could do. The law, for once, was moving in a direction he could not control. That night, I stayed in town at Reverend Thomas's recommendation. He had arranged for me to stay with a family whose father worked for the railroad and had no love for the colonel. I lay in their guest room, unable to sleep, wondering if I had made a terrible mistake, if I had put myself in danger for nothing, if the well would be empty, the case dismissed, my life ruined. At midnight, I heard a knock on the window. I opened it to find Samuel standing on the roof, no longer dripping, no longer cold. He smiled at me, and for the first time, he looked like a child instead of a ghost. He pointed toward the Brennan house on the hill. I looked and saw lights blazing in every window, saw figures running, heard the colonel's voice shouting orders. Something had happened. Something had changed. The next morning, the town learned the truth. The sheriff's men had begun excavating the old well at dawn. 20 feet down, they had found the bones. 3 small skeletons, huddled together, still wearing the rotted remnants of clothing. The doctor confirmed they were children, aged approximately 7 and 10. They had been there for at least 4 years, but Mrs. Brennan was arrested before noon. The colonel with her, and I stood in the town square, surrounded by people who had ignored Ruth's children in life, but wept for them in death, and felt something like peace. Justice had come. Slow and terrible, but it had come. The trial lasted 3 weeks. The evidence was overwhelming. The bones matched the ages of the Brennan children. Catherine's testimony was corroborated by 2 other former servants, who had come forward after her courage gave them strength. The well bore marks of the mechanism Mrs. Brennan had used to redirect the water flow. Mrs. Brennan never confessed. Even when the verdict came back guilty of 3 counts of murder, she maintained her innocence. She stood in the courtroom in her black silk dress and declared that she had been a victim of circumstance, of jealousy, of a vengeful housekeeper's imagination. The jury did not believe her. She was sentenced to hang, but the sentence was later commuted to life imprisonment due to her sex and social standing. She was sent to a prison 300 miles away, where she would spend the rest of her days in a small cell, away from light and beauty and the respect she had craved so desperately. The colonel received 10 years for conspiracy and concealment of death. His empire crumbled. The bank failed. The estate was seized for debts. He died in prison 2 years later, unmourned except by the lawyer who had defended him. I left the Brennan house the day after the arrests. Martha came with me. We moved to a town 50 miles away where no one knew our names or our story. We opened a small boarding house for working women, a place where everyone was paid fairly and treated with dignity. Catherine visited us once, a year after the trial. She looked better, lighter somehow. "I can sleep now," she told us. "For the first time in 4 years, I can sleep without seeing their faces." The children were buried in the churchyard under a proper headstone paid for by donations from townspeople who wanted to ease their own consciences. Reverend Thomas conducted the service. He spoke of innocence stolen, of justice delayed but not denied, of remembering those who had been forgotten. Ruth Whitfield's children, he said, were denied life, denied acknowledgement, denied even the dignity of death certificates, but they will be forgotten no more. We speak their names: Samuel Marcus Brennan, Grace Ruth Brennan, Ruth Elizabeth Brennan. We remember them. May God grant them peace. I stood at the graveside with the photograph in my hands, the only image that remained of their lives. I had thought about burying it with them, but in the end, I kept it. Someone needed to remember not just that they died, but that they lived, that they had been loved by their mother, who had given her life bringing them into the world. The hauntings stopped that day. The children appeared to me once more. The night of the burial, they stood at the foot of my bed, clean and dry, wearing clothes that looked soft and new. Samuel reached out and touched my hand, and I felt warmth instead of cold. Then they turned and walked toward a door that had not been there moments before. Beyond it, I could see light, golden and warm, and a woman's figure waiting with her arms open. Ruth had come to collect her children at last. They walked through the door and it closed behind them, and I never saw them again. I am an old woman now, writing these final words in the year 1943. The world has changed so much since 1896. There have been wars and movements, progress and setbacks, but some truths remain constant. The powerful will always seek to erase the powerless. The convenient will always be discarded when they become inconvenient. and silence will always protect the guilty while condemning the innocent. But I also learned this: one voice, speaking the truth, can shatter years of carefully constructed lies. One person willing to see, to remember, to testify, can change the course of justice. I was just a housekeeper. I had no education, no standing, no power except the power to refuse to forget. It was enough. Ruth's children rest in peace now. Their names are carved in stone where anyone can see them. Their story is known, and somewhere, I like to think, their mother holds them close and tells them they are safe at last. I kept the photograph. When I die, it will go to the County Historical Society along with this journal. Let future generations know what happened in the Brennan house. Let them know that evil can wear a beautiful face and speak with a cultured voice. Let them know that the marginalized and forgotten deserve justice too. And let them know that sometimes the dead are patient. They wait for the right person to come along, the right moment, the right chance to make the truth heard. I was that person for Ruth's children. I spoke when I could have been silent. I risked everything when I could have looked away. I would do it again without hesitation. This is the account of Grace Holloway, housekeeper, witness, and keeper of memory. I have told the truth as I lived it. May God judge whether I did right. And may Ruth and her children rest eternal in the peace they were denied in life. Final entry, November 1943. Historical note: this journal was discovered in 1978 among the effects of Grace Holloway, who died at the age of 70. The events described were verified through county records, newspaper archives, and trial transcripts. The Brennan Estate was demolished in 1921. The well was filled and covered. The headstone for Samuel, Grace, and Ruth Brennan still stands in Millbrook County Cemetery. Elizabeth Brennan died in prison in 19... No one claimed her body. This account is preserved as a testament to the courage of ordinary people who refused to forget.